Hello Bandifans, thank you for joining me for another Crash Bandicoot merchandise video. In today's video we are going to be talking all about Polar, and we're going to be looking at all of the products that are either of Polar or feature Polar that are in my collection. I'm pretty sure I have every incarnation of Polar in that time period because this is the vintage toy line. I don't have any of the new stuff. I know there's a small CTR pop vinyl figure of Polar, but I don't yet have that in my collection, so I'm only focusing on the stuff that came out with the release or around the release of Crash Bandicoot 2. And we're starting off with probably my favourite piece, which is the Tomy Piggy Bank. You put your coins through here, but you can see there's a big Crash, and he's riding a very big Polar. You may wonder what that hole is. Actually, this is the coin stopper, so you pop that in, and then when you pop your coins in, it collects at the bottom. And you pull that out and the coins can come out. This is one of my favourites. This was made by Tomy in 1998, as I said, and Polar is just adorable. Now Tomy and the toy makers had a habit of putting Polar in this position, which is the position that you see him in the warp room in Crash Bandicoot 2, where he's just kind of sitting there hanging out. It would have been cool to have a more dynamic pose, maybe of Polar charging or running, but you know, this one's good enough and it works really well. It's super cute. So let's have a look at some other Polar merchandise. Now, I don't want to show you all the best stuff right at the beginning, so we'll go through some of the sticker sheets and stickers that Polar appeared in. So here's his character card. This appeared in a set of character cards, and Polar is actually number 7. On the back, you have a foil card with a bunch of stickers, and you can see Polar is one of those stickers. He's here with Crash, and he's on his own there as well. So that's Polar's card. He also appears on Aku Aku's card. That's Aku Aku on the back. There's another Polar. He possibly appears on Crash's card, but I don't have that at the moment. You could also get these sticker sheets back in the day. So one of them is the kind of typical stuff where it's a clear sticker, and I think it's meant for clothing or something. You're supposed to write your name in the squares. I mean, they still sell these things here in Japan. So you can see Polar's on these ones. He's at the bottom there, and he's being ridden by Crash on that render. I wish I could find a large version of this render because it's absolutely wonderful. Okay, and the other card has some foil stickers, and you can see Polar right at the bottom here. He also appears on this sticker pad that I got, which isn't from 1999, it's from 2002, but I guess it still counts as vintage, and there he is as his own standalone sticker there, and he also appears at the bottom. And you're supposed to put these stickers onto your Game Boy. That's the idea. Alright, going back into 1999, we got these big sticker sheets with some wonderful images on them. I actually think this is my favourite, the cartoon one. Unfortunately, Polar doesn't appear on this one, except for on the back, where we have information on how to dance like Crash. You can see Polar, Green, and Coco are flanking. Oh, and Aku Aku on either side. But Polar does appear as a sticker on this card. You can see him at the bottom there. He does not appear on the back, however. But a dancing tiny tiger does, so that's something, isn't it? And the last one is Crash and Polar sticker card. So he actually appears in the middle on this big render of Crash and Polar. Again, I wish I could find that. It's so cute. And he appears at the top here. If we turn it over, he also appears at the back, at the bottom. Very gorgeous. Okay, let's look at some more interesting stuff. So this is a keychain by Bam Presto, and it came out in 1999, and you can see it is actually of Crash riding Polar. Oops. So there's Polar down there on a little chain, and so this might be when Crash does a super jump, and he's jumping over, and he's just sort of disconnected from Polar, and then when they touch down, Crash can ride him again. Not as this keychain, but like that, yeah. There you go. So there were a few different keychains in this line, which I do have the whole collection, so we will be doing a review of those. But yes, this is the only one that features Polar, and it's also the only keychain that features a figure of Polar actually in a running pose. So bear that in mind for later. This is the only one where Polar is running. Alright, next up we get to the 1999 mechanical pencil set by N.Gin. I hope this stands. Alright, there it is. So you can see there were 4 pens, Cortex, Coco, Polar and Crash. And Polar is the one we're going to be talking about today, so I'll take him off this little stand I devised. And here he is. So he sits at the top of his little mechanical pencil. And there's no lead in there at the minute, I don't think, but the idea is when you push him down... Oh no, there is lead, look at that. When you push him down, the lead comes out. I'm not going to assume that's the original lead, because you can replace these very easily. And you do that by just popping the character off the top. And then you have yourself a little Polar. These are actually glued onto the pegs, but my Polar, you can actually pop him off. So you do have just a little figure of Polar. So if you wanted to, he'd fit into a little diorama pretty well, just sitting like that. So this was not intended to be a figure. You can see there's glue around here, so it was intended to be stuck on here. But he does kind of operate as a figure if you want him to. So speaking of N.Gin, they also released these pencil toppers as keychains. And you can see they are basically the exact same size. Just there's a keychain version of him. And this comes with a little label here that just says N.Gin. And just says some copyright information here, made in China, Universal Studios. And yeah, he comes on this little chain. My one is, of course, still in the bag. But we can probably better see his sculpt here if I dangle him. Very nice sculpt. Alright, so there you go. That's the N.Gin mechanical pencil and keychain. And speaking of pencils, Polar also appears on some pencil packaging. Alright, so here are the pencils in question. It's actually the packaging that he appears on. So Polar appears on this. This is the tin tray. I've got it taped at the bottom with some masking tape because it always flies open and the pens go flying. But there's Polar up there. I think he's just shot a bomb at N.Gin and N.Gin's flying around. And then you have this package which is made of card and Polar is seen on the back there. Now Polar is seen on lots of... Look at N.Gin, he's flying around. Polar is seen on lots of merchandise, especially related to Crash Team Racing, because they tend to put as many characters on as possible. So I don't really count this as a part of Polar merchandise, but I thought I'd just show you anyway. Alright, and finally, the big reveal, the rarest Polar item of them all. Dun, 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 dun. This is the Tomy, Polar and N.Gin set. It was released in 1999, and this is the only standalone figure of Polar that was ever produced. Like I say, the pencil topper was a pencil topper, wasn't meant to be a figure. However, this one was produced as a figure, and it's also the only Japanese incarnation of the penguin that we can see. This time he's called N.Gin. So you can see up here in the apple, and yes, it is an apple, not a wampa fruit, because in the Japanese version of the game it's called a ringo, which means apple. You can see it says number 2, and that is because there is another set with Crash. So Crash Bandicoot is number 1, and N.Gin and Polar are number 2. I'm not sure why they did the characters this way, but that's how they did it. You can see a lovely render of Polar and N.Gin up there. And you can see it says Character World, so Character World. And then at the bottom, 1998. Yep, this has never been opened. It still has the original tape at the top and the bottom. And these side flaps just hold it together. So there you go. This is the rarest piece of Polar merchandise. If you do come across it, try not to confuse it with the N.Gin products, as I will show you. This is the N.Gin pencil. You can see the N.Gin Polar is actually much bigger than the Tomy Polar. The Tomy Polar is very, very small. So don't be confused. There we go, that's the rare one carded. Very rare, very hard to find carded. And that concludes all of the Polar merchandise for today. Okay guys, so that pretty much concludes the entire vintage Polar collection. You can see most of the items here were from 1998, with the exception of this Game Boy Advance sticker sheet, which was made in 2002. But you can see these are the kind of things you could have got in that era. Unfortunately, there was no Polar action figure released. Resource did have plans to do that in Series 3, but unfortunately they were unable to. So my favourite items, probably the Polar and N.Gin set and the Piggy bank, but also the mechanical pencil and the keychains are cool as well. So if you love Crash Bandicoot merchandise and you want to see more videos about more characters and more merchandise, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can see when the new videos come out, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hit subscribe! And don't forget to press the bell icon, you miserable bandicoots!